Burglary, vandalism and violence are just some of the out-of-school activities that police in the northwest have caught on surveillance cameras.
As video footage reveals, some as young as 6 are committing crimes. It's an increasing problem, but what's the solution?
Tonight we'll be asking these young men what could have prevented them from turning to crime. That's The Line.
To The Line in a week when scientists have been hitting the headlines.
We're not talking about the stew that the government has got themselves into over the BSE scare, but the news from Northumbrian scientists that fans of the show Star Trek can become seriously addicted to it.
The study revealed that some viewers like me can become so wrapped up in the show that when deprived of it, they become irritable and unpleasant.
So if it happens to you, just say negative, Captain. Here's the lineup.
He was on The Line last week. John Prescott had plenty to say about selective education. But what did you have to say about John Prescott?
And the shocking truth about children as young as 6 who've turned to crime. Could boot camps kick our artful dodgers into touch?
Plus, we have the punchline. Defending the Guardian's front page is Mike Unger. He'll be previewing tomorrow's headlines with MPs Alistair Burt and Bob Waring, who no doubt will have plenty to say about the loss of 2,500 jobs at Norweb and North West Water. But first, in the front line tonight, juvenile crime.
What you're about to see is an organised gang in operation. They're aged between 9 and 14 and specialise in stealing from cars. The footage was supplied to us by Greater Manchester Police.
One of the boys tries to open the passenger door while the driver's in the car. The door is locked. His friend then passes him a spark plug, which he uses to smash the window. It's thrown with such force it narrowly misses the female driver as it flies out through the window on her side. He tries again to open the door, but he's unsuccessful and runs off with his friends empty-handed. The woman, clearly in shock, stays put for several minutes before driving off and continues driving for 3 miles before she stops and calls the police.
According to the Home Office, offences committed by 10 to 17-year-olds are on the rise by as much as 12%. So what can be done to turn kids, not even in their teens, off crime?
It's about £6,000 this has cost me in straight money for glass and lenses and indicator lenses and stuff. One of them was about as young as 6 on the videotape, and it's just annoying that kids can be out, parents don't know where the kids are, and if the parents do know where they are, do they care?
In Wythenshawe, a pioneering scheme has been set up which could result in families being evicted because of their children's misbehaviour.
In a nutshell, we're trying to take the problem from the streets back to the parents, and for the parents to re-educate the children. At the end of the day, to evict people and to transplant these youngsters away from the environment that they've grown up in, it won't be the answer. But it is there as a threat, and probably gives us the cutting edge to make parents realise, and the youngsters realise, that whilst they can play out in the evenings, they cannot misbehave.
I think it's a good idea. It's, if they're permanently, causing damage, I think. But because otherwise, nothing's going to be done otherwise, is it?
I think they should do something because they're not doing anything at the moment. And the kids have set fire to about 10 houses. And it's all at the back of my garden leads at the back of these houses, and they're all completely ruined. Someone's going to get hurt one day. So I think they should do something drastic.
Because it's not for the kids to do, and I don't think it's right if they go out like getting into trouble, throwing stones or whatever they're doing, and then we're going to get evicted and all that. It's just wrong. It's out of order.
The problem of juvenile crime is of growing concern to the two main parties. Since 1987, the number of offences by and against the young have increased by 41%. So what's their solution?
There's got to be clearer rules for the use of secure accommodation, more secure accommodation available for the persistent young offenders. There's got to be a fast track to get the persistent young offenders into court. There's got to be an end to the absurd rule that many courts operate, by which if you've got a series of offences committed, the first offence in time is not dealt with until the last one is ready, which simply adds up to delays and leads to more offending while the youngster is on bail. We want better bail support schemes so that where the youngsters are on bail, they're given proper support and so are their families. We want parental responsibility orders to provide parental training and to get across to parents that they are responsible in many cases for their youngsters' behaviour.
There are already on the statute book laws which put responsibilities on parents, but some parents are simply not going to be amenable to that. So we have to go further and make sure that we have the mechanisms in place to take those children out of harm's way. That may be social services, and they've got to realise they have that responsibility when children are a menace to society, or it may be the criminal justice system taking advantage of the new secure training centres by which 12 to 14-year-olds can be committed to custodial sentences, in effect, in these new centres.
In the States, high-intensity training camps, better known as boot camps, have come back into fashion. This summer at Thorne Cross in Cheshire, the government will open a similar scheme to deal with 18 to 21-year-olds.
I've looked at boot camps in America. The boot camp movement has been developed in order to get people out of prison early. There's no serious pretense in America that it makes people better. The government tried the so-called short, sharp shock in this country in the early 1980s, and it was abandoned by the Conservatives because these places turned out to be colleges of crime. You do need secure accommodation. You need more secure accommodation for youngsters.
But are deterrents ever really effective?
I'd like us to stop using the whole issue of youth crime as some kind of political football. There really are no quick fixes, no easy answers. And a deterrent will only actually work if people believe that they're going to get caught. And young people don't believe they're going to be caught. We've got to start looking at them at 12 and 13 when they drop out of school. Our experience is that young people frequently drop out of school in the last 2 to 3 years and never return. And that has a tremendous impact on them. It means that in today's job market, they haven't got a chance of finding employment.
Well, joining me now to discuss some of those solutions in that film are Mark, Graham and Darren. They're aged between 16 and 21, and between them have been charged or cautioned with 25 offences, mostly bike and car theft. If I can start by asking you all a broad question, how old were you all when you first got started and involved with crime?
I was at the age of 14 to 15.
Right. Graham?
Same, about 14, 15.
14. Darren?
16.
You were 16, so you're a late starter. Mark, if I can begin with you, what made you get involved in the first place?
Boredom, nothing to do really, no money coming in or anything, just like wanting to be like one of the boys and stuff.
Did you hang around with people who were older than you?
Yeah.
Right. Is that common for you too? Yeah.
It's the same.
Darren, why did you start getting into trouble? I mean, 16 is quite old insofar as this film is concerned. So why did you start getting involved then?
Mainly because of the lack of money.
Right. As far as like facilities are concerned, why isn't there anything to do outside? I mean, do you have youth groups you can go to, Graham?
Yeah, but they're just emptied, nothing to do in youth clubs. Just
what do they include? I mean, what sort of things can you do?
Oh, like nothing, just have a game of pool.
Right.
Start. Just size things like they have a little disco, but when I used to go, it was boring. There was nothing to do in there.
Right. Now, what do you think of the solutions that have been suggested, like in that film, of something like a boot camp? Would they work? Would you like those?
With some people, yes, but with some, as soon as they get back out there with the friends, they're just going to get back straight into it again.
So it wouldn't stop you from reoffending, you don't think,
No.
or at least not for...
It might if you don't want to go back into the prison.
Would it put you off? I mean, it looks a fairly harsh regime. It doesn't look very pleasant, does it?
No, not that much. It put me off.
Stop you, would it? What about you?
Well, it would put you off a bit, but there's always a chance that when you get out, you don't think you're going to get caught.
Right.
So you would re-offend.
Right. Now, you were saying earlier on that money plays a big part, obviously. I mean, you can make quite a lot of money involved in crime. Tell me how much you made when you were at your height, as it were.
Varies really on what you steal and things like that really. Like sometimes on like a good night we're earning like £200 to £300.
For a car?
Yeah, that's just for yourself, not including your friends.
Right, and so what you do several cars a night or something like that?
Yeah.
And what you're on benefit, or at least you were you on benefit at the time?
Not when I was at an early age, no, because there is no benefit for you.
Right.
So therefore you have to go out and steal to get money.
Right. Now, Graham, you're actually not even eligible for benefit. You've stopped offending, but how are you living?
My mum just living with my sister. My sister puts me up.
Right, so you're lucky because you've got family to rely on, but presumably, you know, quite a few people haven't. What's your situation?
Well, at the moment I'm on benefit and I've managed to stop crime with the help of probation.
I mean, a lot of people say, certainly a lot of middle-aged people will say, well, I pay all my taxes and I hand it out to people who've been offenders and they're getting so much money, you know, so every month of my money, it shouldn't be allowed. Tell me why you have a difficulty living on that. I mean, how do you arrange things?
Well, you get £73 odd a fortnight, and out of that you got to buy electric, gas, shopping. You've just got no money to go out and enjoy yourself.
So that's how the crime starts, presumably?
Yes.
Right, OK. You're all on probation or under caution, haven't got into trouble now for several months. What made you all stop?
Basically, it was my probation officer, Janet. She actually got me in touch with a college, started me on like a mechanics course, which is to do with cars, which I like a lot, which has stopped me from re-offending. And like, basically, I just don't want to go back to prison as well.
Yeah, my mate, he introduced me to an auto crime project, carts, and since I've been going there, that's set me straight.
Right.
It's
giving you something to do and motivation and some hope. What about you, Dan?
I've been doing a lot better with my money, going out to the pictures and just spending a lot more time.
You're just coping better than you were. Just very quickly from you all, what solutions do you have if you were the government, if you were MPs? What solutions would you have?
I don't think the boot camp would really do very much for them, because at first, when they first come out, they'll say, oh, I'm not going to get in trouble, but give it a month and they'll be back in prison again.
So are you looking at better rehabilitation or better...
More things for people to do. Like on the streets, like they should do a survey saying, like, what do you want to do, instead of us saying, like, oh, well, you should do this.
Right.
I think that they should go around and tell kids in school the consequences of crime and tell them what would happen to them if they get in trouble.
Right, and Darren?
I think a raise in benefits could help, because people would have more money to enjoy themselves. They wouldn't need to steal. All
right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Mark, Graham, Darren, thanks for joining me in the studio. To you, Rob.
Well, we'd like to know your line on juvenile crime. You can ring us now with your opinion on 0345 321 209. That's 0345 321 209. Calls will cost just 8p per minute, and that number is on ITV Teletext page 612.
Now, here's what you had to say about what John Prescott had to say on selective education when he appeared on the programme last week.
I agree with John Prescott. The majority shouldn't lose out while the minority gain. There should be an equal opportunity for everybody, no matter the standard of the abilities to learn.
I do not agree with John Prescott on your programme. It is again jealousy that they regard the clever ones should be held back. We would want to keep our grammar schools in Trafford.
Good education for all is a very important national investment. Labour Party is hoping to be the next party of government. Unfortunately, Labour Party's policy on education is muddled and confused and is likely to be a vote loser.
Does John Prescott not realise that people move into the South Trafford area because of the selective system, because we have an 11+ in grammar schools, and if he were to abolish that in the south of the borough, he would lose the middle class vote.
More views in a moment. Join us after this for the punchline.
At his Ellesmere Port School, John Prescott performed in a production of Snow White, playing one of the 7 dwarfs. But which one? Was it bashful, dopey, or grumpy? Answer after the break. In part 1, we asked which dwarf did John Prescott play in a school production of Snow White? The answer, of course, is grumpy. Well, if the cap fits, wear it.
I do hope his mother isn't watching in Chester tonight. Welcome back to part 2 of the programme. Let's take a look at tomorrow morning's headlines. I'm joined down the line by the Conservative Minister Alison Tarpey, who is, of course, a Minister at the Department of Social Security with special responsibility for disabled people, and is also Minister for Manchester and Salford. Here in the studio, I'm joined by the Labour MP, Bob Waring, who has been described as a candid, articulate, stump orator who likes ballet and supports Everton. Draw any conclusions you like yourselves. And I'm also joined by a man who has edited both the Liverpool Echo and the Manchester Evening News, the MEN, for 13 years, and is here tonight to preview his sister paper, The Guardian, Mike Unger. Welcome to the programme. Mike, let's start with the first mock-up that you've got there of tomorrow morning's Guardian. What are they leading with?
Yes, as you can see, it's an early rough version of the paper without the picture on page 1. The main story is Gillian Shepherd's plans to gradually demolish the comprehensive school system. The other major two stories on page 1 is BT probably going to merge with cable and wireless in a £39 billion merger. And then at the bottom of the page, we've got, of course, the new measures announced this evening by the government over BSE.
And basically, the Gillian Shepherd announcement, Alison Tarpey, if I'm correct, is going to allow a greater freedom for schools to select their pupils. Do you think that this is actually something the electorate wants?
I think the electorate want good schools, and I think what they've seen from the Conservative Party over the past few years has been a very strong commitment to that, and a breaking down of a 60s, 70s consensus where quality and standards didn't appear to be as important as theories of equality. And what Gillian Shepherd is doing is working with the grain of public feeling, which has been to allow a greater mix in schools now, the grant-maintained initiative that was so strongly resented by the Labour Party, and parents are voting to say that they want to see good quality schools.
So you're happy to see a two-tier system now? You're happy to see inequality creeping back as part of a system of government in schools?
Well, there you are. You see, you lead with prejudicial comments. We all want to see equality of opportunity. And
How
we
do
want
you
to
get that, Alistair, if you've got a system where some people are going to be denied the quality of education that others will get?
Well, hold on a minute. You do it by allowing people to finish their questions for a start. What you do is you have equality of opportunity, but there is different types of teaching in comprehensive schools, and what the government is saying is that if an area and if schools want to have a greater degree of selection, and if parents are prepared to back it and support it, why should there not be this mix available as well as other schools in the state system?
All right, Bob Waring, do you accept that your party is now confused about this issue, as some people were saying before part 1, and in fact the Conservatives have got it right? People do want more selection.
Well, the party's not confused, and I'm certainly not confused, because I can remember the days of selection. I was one of those who passed 11+ examination and actually went to a grammar school in Liverpool. But I've always been opposed to the segregation of young people at the age of 11, and there are a number of reasons for that.
But in circumstances where your own party are in control, as we were talking about on this programme last week, like in Trafford, you've still kept the grammar schools because you know the middle classes like the grammar schools.
Well, I can't speak for Trafford, but I can speak for myself. And I can tell you that I remember the time when, if you happened to be a youngster living in Wales, you had a 2 out of 3 chance of getting into a grammar school. If you lived in Liverpool, it was about 7 out of 100 chance of getting into a grammar school, so the selection's wrong.
The point you made about Trafford is a very valid one. I mean, the Labour Party have got their knickers in a twist over education. Trafford rightly want the grammar schools maintained. They want the mixture of the comprehensives and the grammar schools. The Labour Party themselves are vacillating over their own policy.
So do you think Alistair Burt's right? Do you think that this policy Gillian Shepherd has announced today actually will win them votes?
I think it could win both parties' votes, actually, because I think at the end of the day that both parties will come forward with a very similar proposal.
Will you go along with that?
I certainly would never go along with that, because as I said before, it was wrong the way it worked before. It depended upon which part of the country you lived in, what your child's chances were of getting to a grammar school. And in fact, as a former participant in the education field, I know that young people, young children, between the ages of 11 and 18, they progress at very different rates.
All right, well, Alistair Burt, do you want to come in very quickly?
I just wanted to say, I think Bob's attitude characterises the difference between the two parties. We're prepared to listen to parents and want to provide a degree of choice. Bob's saying, I don't like this, I don't want to wear it, and I don't see why anyone else should have it either.
All right,
I think that's the difference between us.
Let's move on to another issue. The Guardian is, of course, reporting the news today about BSc. Very quickly, Mike, the latest development that they're reporting at the bottom of page 1 is what?
Well, they're saying that all cattle over the age of 30 months are likely to be culled, I think is the politically correct word, slaughtered, and as a bid to restore confidence.
Now, a lot has been said about this, but so I don't want to dwell on it. But very quickly, Alistair Burt, this has been a tragedy that's been turned into a disaster in the hands of your ministers, hasn't it?
I think it is a tragedy, and I think it's a problem that would have affected any government. The problem is now to restore confidence in British beef and to try and present the evidence, which is difficult and not very clear in some ways, to people as best we can. Now, I think the government has been trying to refine that over the past few days, and Douglas Hogg said today that he believed British beef was safe and people should be able to eat it, and we want now to try and get that message over. And taking these sort of measures that he suggested tonight will help people have the confidence to feel that that message is right.
Very quickly, Bob, Michael, do you think anything's going to restore confidence in British meat?
Yes, I think these measures will restore confidence, because I don't think there's fundamentally anything wrong with British beef itself. It's the side products that there's a question mark over.
All right, let's just leave it there for a moment, if you don't mind, Bob, because I want to turn to the story. There's a story today about BT, of course, and Cable and Wireless possibly merging. It comes on the day that, of course, if we have a look at the headline in the Liverpool Echo today, it was dominated by the news of 1,700 jobs going at United Utilities. The MEN led on the fact that the total job loss is 2,500. Alistair Burt, very quickly, a lot of people warned you that this was going to happen. This is a lot of families who are going to be deprived of a livelihood now. It shows that privatisation surely has gone badly wrong.
Well, no, hold on. At the time that companies merged, they said there would be these job losses because they were merging two very big organisations together. Everyone expected it. Workers who were spoken to today on the television knew it was coming.
Does that
and
justify it, though, Alistair?
The company have said it's all about voluntary redundancy if they can possibly make it that way.
2,500 voluntary redundancies. Do you seriously believe that?
Well, that's what the company's talking about. We're
Do you
talking about a very big
believe that,
organisation.
Alistair? Do you seriously believe that 2,500 people will volunteer for redundancy?
Rob, if you have two people doing the same jobs, do you think any company keeps them both?
Bob Waring?
Well, quite honestly, this is the result of privatisation, quite clearly. The fact of the matter is that both these organisations are natural monopolies, and they've come together to become an even bigger monopoly.
In a word,
and
would you want to see Labour renationalise water?
I personally certainly would.
All right, I've got to leave it there. We're right out of time. Sorry, Alistair. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Bob. Now over to Alison.
We've just got time for some more headlines. 3 British soldiers serving in Cyprus have tonight been found guilty of the manslaughter of a Danish tour guide on the island.
And 172 Liverpool City Council workers are to lose their jobs as councillors battle to bridge a £44 million budget deficit. That's all from us tonight. We'll be back next Thursday. For the moment,
good night.
Good night.